Apocrypha and the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've always thought that heaven was an important topic simply because it represents the end game if you're a Christian. Christians have always believed that this isn't all there is, that the life we have here is only preparatory to the life that will come. So the object of this course is to trace the theology of Judaism and then into Christianity on what heaven is all about. And as we will see, the theology in the Old Testament is not fully formed. The theology of Christianity regarding heaven is pretty fully formed. And so we also need to look at that middle period between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament to see how that theology developed, because you can see signs of what we think of as heaven much more in the Apocrypha and the Dead Sea Scrolls than we see it in the Old Testament. Now, certainly in the Old Testament, you see heaven as a place where God reigns, where God is, or where the angels are, that sort of thing. But you don't see so much that concept that heaven is a place where we go after we die, after we're believers. But we do see that develop during the intertestamental period. So I have to give the disclaimer that I always give when we teach a course using those sources, is that I'm making no statement whatsoever on whether the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Apocrypha or the Septuagint are divinely inspired or not. However, we can use them as valuable historical and social references in terms of development of both theology and history during the period between the Testaments. Therefore, please don't run and tell Bryant that I said that the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Apocrypha were divinely inspired, even though some people certainly do believe they do. And in the case of the Apocrypha, probably about 1.5 billion Christians in the world think they were divinely inspired, even though as Presbyterians we officially don't. Are there any questions on that?
If I develop a rash or have trouble breathing.
Okay, let us dive in. Any questions about this? If you don't have the book, they're up here for $10. In this course, we're sending into heaven, but the book also covers hell. If you would like to descend into hell as the next course, you already have. And I should mention the wonderful cover, which shows the two paths you can take. And this is the pious path that leads to heaven. And this is the rock and roll, sex and drugs path, which leads to perdition.
The AC/DC concert.
So we'll be looking at this path in this course.
Otherwise known as Grateful Dead.
So we'll look at the Old Testament. We'll look at the period between the Testaments. We'll look at the New Testament. And we'll look a little at the Christian Apocrypha, which is a group of books written after the last apostle died, which certainly are not divinely inspired. But the reason I'll go over that in this course is because you can see where people like Milton and Dante got some of their ideas from, is because they took them directly out of the Christian Apocrypha. And I should note, one thing we are not going to be discussing in this course is the Middle Ages. So we're not talking about Paradise Lost or Dante. We talked about those in the last course, but we're not going to talk even about the early church fathers. And the wonderful engraving there is from Gustave Doré, and I lifted several drawings of his for use in the course. Gustave Doré lived in the 19th century, so I can use his drawings with impunity. Copyright issue. Okay, the quiz. In the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, true or false, heaven is described as a place that the righteous go after they die. False. True or false, there are no visions of heaven in the Old Testament. False. Certainly Daniel and Isaiah leap to mind. True or false, the only 2 Old Testament figures that ascend to heaven without dying are Elijah and Moses.
True.
That's actually false. That's one of those trick questions. It's Elijah and Enoch. Not Elijah. True or false? People that have a vision of heaven in the New Testament, or two people that have a vision of heaven in the New Testament are Paul and John. Fair enough. Remember, Paul goes to the third heaven, and there's all that weird stuff, which we will talk about. True or false? There's no concept of a Son of Man figure being in heaven in the Old Testament. False. Dang it. True or false? First Enoch was written by Enoch in the 1st century BC. False. Enoch lived long before First Enoch was written. However, if your book sales aren't doing real well, you take some famous person's name and you say, yeah, they wrote it, but I will take the royalties. So it's a good deal, actually.
So you got bootleg.
Pardon?
You got bootleg.
Yeah. I think actually my next book I'm going to say is written by Colin Powell. And I'll just collect the royalties.
There you go.
True or false? The only place in the Bible that discusses seraphs is Revelation. False, actually. True or false? Revelation describes a war in heaven between Michael and Satan.
True.
True. True or false? Protestants typically believe that the fact that Peter received the keys to the kingdom of heaven means that the church receives its authority from Peter.
False.
True or false? There are more references to heaven in Genesis than in any other book of the Bible.
True.
It's probably false. Probably Revelation. We have that honor.
That was
True or false? The New Testament teaches that heaven will always exist as it exists today. That's false. As we get into that whole, new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem. True or false? Revelation teaches that the New Jerusalem will have a magnificent temple from which to worship God.
false.
False. That's good. You guys can actually remember 2 courses back. We talked about all this. That's good. True or false? Peter decides to preach to the Gentiles because of a vision from heaven.
False.
It's actually true.
It's true. I thought it was false. Okay. I thought it was true.
The thing I like about Joe is even when he's wrong, he does it authoritatively. Yeah, Peter has the vision where the sheets coming down, and
Yeah, but what
the corners are held.
Is that what the clean and the unclean eating?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
when you think of preaching to the Gentiles, you tend to think of Paul.
True or false? The cherubim placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden are cuddly children. False. I don't even know where the idea that the cherubim were these little cute things on
They're little
Valentine's. We start out with the first 5 books of the Bible, and the way I wrote this course, at least the biblical part, is I kind of give a summary, and then we go into the actual. So the way I do it is I give kind of an overview, an outline, and then we go into the actual references. I will not read every reference to heaven in the New Testament. We'll try to pick out ones that are representative. So in the first 5 books of the Bible, heaven is presented as a place where God and his angels reside, but not as a place where the righteous go after they die. Because remember, in the Old Testament, when you die, you go to the Sheol place, and everybody goes to Sheol, and Sheol simply means abode of the dead, and sometimes it could simply be interpreted in a context that you're just dead.
That place covered in bacon.
We do hear that God created heaven. Shouldn't be any shock there. God resides in heaven, so that's where his house is. God can send angels out from heaven to communicate with and interact with human beings. And God can speak from heaven to humans and send down fire from heaven. So this is all stuff that we hear about in the first 5 books.